everyone. It's good to see you. So happy to be here with the Coconut Theatre. My name is Jessica Litwack. I'm an actress and a playwright, and I work all over the world. I'm going to take my glasses off so you don't see the reflection of the glass. I'm here in California in the United States, so it's very, very early here. I'm here in California. I usually am in New York, and I've worked in India quite a few times. I worked in Badu near Calcutta. I've taught in Calcutta, and I've also done a project that I'm going to talk to you about in Calcutta, an applied theater play. Applied theater is, in my definition, although you can find many other definitions, in my definition, it is theater that is applied to a specific community or population. So instead of just being in a theater, we will work with specific communities within the community. So for instance, Jana Sanskriti, if you've heard of them, I don't know if you've heard of them, the Jana Sanskriti, what they do, and this is Theater of the Oppressed, this is not exactly my kind of theater because I use Theater of the Oppressed, but I also work in more traditional forms of theater because I have a graduate degree as a playwright and a graduate degree as an actress, and then I have another PhD in theater for personal and social change. So applied theater is really theater for me, theater for personal and social change, working very specifically with communities who need work and using theater as a way to help them. So Jana Sanskriti, who is a wonderful company in Badu, right outside of Calcutta, goes into 27 villages, finds out what the villages need, and then makes theater around those needs. So if there's domestic violence in a place, they will make a play about domestic violence and then involve the audience in solving the problems of the play. So one thing, and this is called forum theater. So for instance, in forum theater, and many of you probably know this, but I'll just explain it for those who don't. In forum theater, you'll have a play, and the play will be going on, and say the play is about a man who's hitting his wife. And so the actors will develop this play and perform it, and the actress playing the wife may say, don't hit me, and then the play will continue, and then we'll go back again and do the play up to this point, don't hit me, for instance. We've done it about many subjects. And I'll say stop if I'm the director, and the audience, I said, does anybody have an idea of how this woman could defend herself better or have a better way of standing up to her husband? Does anyone have an idea? And people from the audience will come up, take her role, the actress will go off, the audience member will come in, and they will have an idea of how to speak to the husband, for instance. So this is a way of involving the audience in solving the problem of the play, and we've done many different kinds of plays. And that's Theater of the Oppressed, forum theater, and that's the way they apply their theater techniques to the issues around them. What I do is a little bit different because as a playwright and an actress, I'm really trying to make what I call great art of good service. So I will write a play, hire professional actors, and use some of the pedagogy of the oppressed, use some of those techniques within our process, but end up with a play that doesn't get interrupted, but in every single play, there's a different form of audience engagement. So, I've written articles, which I can also provide to you, an article about socially engaged theater, so in audience engagement within a theater project. And and I've written very specifically about the project I'm going to tell you about, which is called the Fear Project, which I've also done in India. And then I can tell you about a few other projects that I'm doing. So for me, there are three kinds of theater. There is the theater of product, which is really in America the Broadway theater, which is theater that is very highly designed and well acted and well written and well directed and very beautiful, which is great, and I've trained that way. There's theater of process, which is theater where the process of making it is just as important as the product. So I went to the experimental theater wing at New York University, and the process was really the focus. And then there's the theater that I do now, a combination of the first two, but I call it theater of impact. And that means that my first goal is to see what the audience needs and try to impact them and influence them and serve them in a very specific way that will accommodate their needs. So I'll tell you three stories of three different ways that I've done it recently. I have been doing this for 40 years and have been making theater for a long time, but I will only tell you about the projects that I'm kind of currently involved in and give you a taste of some different forms of audience engagement. Of course, now with the pandemic and with us making theater on Zoom, it's trying to find a way to keep that audience engagement alive while we're all doing virtual theater. And I just had a conversation with a woman who has been doing that in a very creative way. She's a young woman with a lot of media experience, and that's what all of us theater practitioners who are used to working live need right now. So I'm trying to create audience engagement even virtually. So I am I also want to say that not only am I a playwright, an actress, an educator, I also build puppets, which is a big part of my life, and I also am a drama therapist. So all of these skills go into the creation of my company, which is called the HEAT Collective, HEAT. I can send you a link, and that stands for Healing, Education, Activism, and Theater. And it's really healing, education, and activism through theater, since I do all of my work as a theater practitioner, but focusing on healing, education, and activism. So with that background, I'll begin telling you about the Fear Project. And the Fear Project was done first in the Czech Republic. And I got a State Department grant to a U.S. State Department grant before, when I had a different president, to go to the Czech Republic and really focus on this issue theatrically of xenophobia, because in the Czech Republic they were very concerned about immigrants, especially Muslims, and I've worked quite a lot in the Middle East with Arabic theater, and so they brought me in to deal with this problem. Now the funny thing about the Czech Republic is there are no Muslims there, very few. So why they were so afraid and why there was so much hate, I couldn't understand. So I asked this colleague of mine in the Czech Republic, why is there so much hate? And he said this beautiful thing. He said, in the basement of the house of hate, you will find the fear. And immediately the Fear Project was born. And so the Fear Project has taken on a very specific shape. And I've now done it all over the Czech Republic in 7 cities, in Calcutta, in Milwaukee, in New York twice, in Los Angeles twice, and now for the 6th Fear Project, I am doing it internationally, meaning I have actors in the Czech Republic, in Spain, in France, in India, in California, in St. Louis, Missouri, and in New York. So it's quite challenging to get everybody together on Zoom. But the pandemic has also created the possibility for doing something like this. And all of the people now who are working on it have all been in one of the other FEAR projects. So they're all graduates of the FEAR project and know what we're doing. So what the FEAR project is we go into a community, to anywhere. So we're all going into our different communities this time. And all of the actors are involved in interviewing people with the same 14 questions. We have the same 14 questions, and we have a very specific way of interviewing people. There's a time limit to each question. It's really like a research project, and all the actors go out and they have the experience of interviewing people. And I asked them to interview at least 2 very different people. So we have ethnic diversity in our interviewees, but we also have age diversity. This time we have a 5-year-old girl who has written, who has answered these questions. Then they send all of the interviews to me. So it's just exactly verbatim. So exactly what the person said, they record it and transcribe it and send it to me. And then I take all of the interviews. This time with the international project, we had 58 pages of interviews. And from those interviews, I make a choral poem. So I take them and divide it for as many actors as I have. So this time I divided it for 7 voices. And then we get together and we read the choral poem aloud. And it is a reflection of every single person who we've interviewed. But as a poem, that means sometimes I will have 4 voices saying it, or 1 voice just saying 1 word, and then all 7 voices completing 1 sentence. Or I'll repeat a word again and again. I don't change any of the words, but I make them into a choral piece like music. Then from that reading, we decide what the story is inside it. And then I go off and write the play. And the play always has been, and this is the 6th one I've done, is a story of a family, or some kind of a shape of a family, who are the actors playing these characters that I write, that kind of come out of the things that have come up in the interviews. And the play is always a mixture of the choral poem for each of the 13 questions, and then in between pieces of the choral poem with the verbatim interviews, there's the story of a family. And so it goes choral poem, scene, monologue, choral poem, scene, monologue. So it becomes a beautiful experience and a beautiful play. That's what we strive for. Each time the play is different based on what's going on with the interviews. So of course, this time it was so much about COVID-19 and the pandemic. When I did it a year ago in Los Angeles, the answers were very different. When I did it in India, in West Bengal, the answers were completely different. And so the play really comes out of whatever is on the mind of the people we interview. Then, yes, and somebody has said the FEAR project seems like you were doing oral history and autoethnography. That is absolutely correct. But then we're taking it and really making a performance out of it. Then the important thing is, and this is what I'm trying to figure out virtually, the important thing is every time we perform, the actors go into the audience before the show with yellow paper, and this is important that it's yellow, because they interview the audience with the same 13, or this time we added 1 more, so there's 14 questions. They ask the audience the same 14 questions that we used with the interviews that we began the play with. So the audience has the experience of being interviewed intimately and being asked these questions, and then they see the play, and then right after the play is done, we sit down and talk to them. We don't go off stage, we just sit down, we talk to them and say, which was the hardest question to ask? What was the easiest? Would you answer differently now having seen the play? And we really process with them and talk to them about their fears and about the questions. So yes, and so it turns into both begins with autoethnography, culminates in a theatrical performance, and and then ends up being a kind of almost therapeutic and real community-based, and the audience always leaves talking to each other. The 14 questions are: what are you afraid of? Who are you afraid of? Where are you afraid? How do you react to fear? How do you conquer fear? What is the enemy? Who is the enemy? Where is the enemy? How do you react to hate? How do you conquer hate? Who is the stranger? What is home? How do you feel about your country right now? And then we added a 14th question this time because of the pandemic. The 14th question is, what gives you hope? So these are the questions, and the play is really a mixture of verbatim interviews and a completely imagined story of the family within it. Yes, Dwight Conquergood is one of my teachers and mentors. He's no longer with us, but there's he's done a lot of ethnographic performances. So yes, so that's one form of socially engaged theater, and it's one that I'm quite involved with right now. And again, I'm just telling you about the projects I'm doing now. I created a company called Artists Rise Up New York, and we did many projects of audience engagement, but I won't go into all of those now. I promised you 3, so I'll give you the 3 that I'm currently working on. The second one that I'm currently working on is called My Heart is in the East. And this is a play I'm working with in Europe. I don't know if you've read the news, but Americans have just been banned from Europe because of our mismanagement of the COVID situation. So I don't know how this will continue. I'm working with an Algerian Muslim man who lives in Paris. We have a director who's in the UK. We have musicians who are all over the East and Western Europe. And me, who's an American theater artist who's also Jewish. So it brings up a lot of the Jewish and Arabic questions. And I have been working on this for a long time. It was the subject of my doctoral work, because as a Jewish theater artist working in the Arab world, I've worked in Iraq and Palestine frequently, as well as Egypt and Lebanon. And so we, in this project, we really look at this issue, but we look at it from the context of history and of poetry. So in about 1,000 years ago, there was this period called the Golden Age in southern Spain, in Islamic Spain. It was called the convivencia, the coexistence, when Arabs and Christians and Jews lived in relative harmony, but it was an Islamic society. So the Arabs were the rulers of the land, but people did this incredible poetic exchange in different languages, in all the languages that were around at that time, but especially Jews and Arabs who've been at each other's throats for centuries were really working together. And so the story is about a Jewish woman who's a poet, but a secret poet, because she's not allowed in her culture to be a poet in public, and then an Arabic man who's also a poet. And the twist is that he's in much more control, because he's a man and he's Arabic, and she's a woman and she's Jewish, and he has a voice in the public sphere and she does not. However, he's got writer's block and he can't write, and she has a very creative flow even though she can't speak. So he can't write and she can't speak. So it's an interesting relationship. But this is 1,000 years ago, and it's paralleled with the story of two poets in contemporary times, a Jewish theater artist in Iraq, which is based on a true story of my life, working with an Iraqi poet, where the the systems are reversed. She's in sort of political higher status, but she's blocked, and he is in a struggle being a worker in Iraq, but is also a prolific poet. So it's very interesting to see the dynamic, and they go back in time to kind of resolve their political problems. So that's the basic story. It's much more intricate and better than I've just explained it. Great, I'm just checking the chat. So what happens with the audience is this. The audience comes in, and on all of their chairs, and the play is really about poetry as a means of building peace between different peoples. And so the audience sits down, and on their chair, everybody's got a different color, red, yellow, blue, and green, with a different prompt for poetic prompt. And so it could be rhyme, or a homonym, or two different languages, or comparison, or something. There's a little writing prompt, but the audience doesn't understand it. They just get their card, and they sit down and they see this play. At the end of the play, the two actors, come out and say, okay, please, now we're going to have a poetry contest just like in the play. So could you please get with the people in your same color? So all the red people go there, the green, the blue, the yellow, and they have a prompt, and together those audience members write one line of poetry. And the theme of every line, the 4 lines of poetry, is about intercultural relationships and cultural competency, and everything the play is about justice and peace and all the things that come up in the play, but one line of poetry with that prompt. So if you're in the rhyming group, you've got to make it rhyme. You'll understand. So then the actors passed around while these groups of strangers, and we always make sure that we have a red, a blue, a green next to each other so that the person isn't with the people they came with, but with strangers. They write a poetry. Meanwhile, they're being passed out a tray of dates, almonds, olives, and grapes. And if they want to eat, they can. And then we have a poetry contest. The actors come out and judge the poetry contest, but everybody wins. So you get the grape prize, the date prize, the almond prize, and the olive, the big olive or the grand olive. It's very fun, and the audiences then have come together and share, and only then do we sit down and have a true discussion about whether art can make peace, whether peace building through performance is possible, and through poetry. And so we always have a speaker, and maybe it's a speaker that is a conflict, a transformation expert, or a history professor, or somebody related to the theme of the play. But the audience go from being strangers to being pulled in with this play to being colleagues in a poetry, writing one line of poetry, to having some fun with the contest and the snacks, to actually being involved in a discussion, and to leave really having come into community. So that's the audience engagement of My Heart is in the East. So that's the Fear Project, My Heart is in the East. The third project is something I was commissioned to write because this year is the 100th year anniversary of women's right to vote. So the women got the right to vote in 1920. Truthfully, white women got the right to vote in 1920, and women of color didn't get that vote until later. But I was commissioned to write a play about a particular woman who was very active in the suffrage vote in California, and women in California got the vote in 1911, so 9 years before the rest of the country. And she had a lunchroom in San Francisco, where I grew up and where I'm now living again temporarily. And the lunchroom served 5 cents. So, and if you know the dollar, it's a nickel, which is about $1 today. But in 1911, she served delicious soup and food only for 5 cents, only for a nickel, to bring in working women to the cause of getting the vote for women. And it wasn't just rich women, she wanted really working women to come. So she started this lunchroom. So here the audience comes into a real lunchroom. When they come and they give their ticket, they get a nickel, a little 5-cent piece, and then they can buy soup, which is with that nickel, which is served by people in the lunchroom. They walk in as if they are in 1911 into this lunchroom, and then some of the audience are asked to read things during the play, and the play happens. I've written it, and it was slated to be performed in October. I don't know if it's ever going to be performed in October. I wanted it before the next election, but we are going to do it on a Zoom in any case. And then the challenge is how to involve the audience, because in this audience engagement, the audience is drinking soup and they're interacting with the actors, and they even have lines to say. And by the end, when we get to the discussion about suffrage, they're really engaged and brought into community. So those are 3 examples of applied theater. And I have so many more related to drama therapy, so much more about the healing aspect. But with the Heat Collective, we do both drama therapy and then we do theater, that is socially engaged theater. So that means that, like, these projects that I've talked to you about all have social issues attached to them, people's fears, and really taking from the community what it's afraid of. The idea of Jewish Arabic peace and justice, and then the idea of suffrage. We also talk a lot about African American and Native American women's right to vote as well within the play, and engage the audience with food and discussion. So that's just an example of what I define in my life as applied theater, including a discussion of forum theater and Jana Sanskriti in your country. Secret Agents. Somebody wants to hear about Secret Agents. Yes, I love that play. It is less about applied theater in that in Secret Agents we didn't have audience engagement or even much audience discussion, although we did have talkbacks. Secret Agents is a play I wrote about during and right after my brother died of AIDS, and so it was basically a eulogy for him when he passed. AIDS and HIV were very, very much a part of my life. I lost a lot of people, and my brother and I played Secret Agents. When we were little, we were obsessed with James Bond and those movies, and so the play is really an exploration of secrets. So not only did we play Secret Agents, but when he became HIV positive, he kept it as a secret, and I didn't know for 5 years till he was very, very sick and only had a year to live. And so it is very autobiographical, but it's also fantastical because James Bond is part of the play. He's a character. And when we performed it in Los Angeles, there was all kinds of James Bond elements, exploding briefcases and James Bond coming up from the floor and things flying down from the sky. It was very, very fun, and really came out of that era of secret agent movies and television. However, the core of the story is quite sad. So that's Secret Agents. It's been lovely being with you today, and it's been wonderful to share some of these ideas with you. I went from being a professional actress in the traditional theater and then a professional playwright to really devoting my life to this work of healing and activism through theater. So it's been a great pleasure to talk about it today. So somebody has asked me, which is the favorite play in which I have acted? Well, I actually just did a play about a year ago called The Night It Rained, and it was also a play I'd written, but it had 6 actors and puppets and was really about my childhood growing up in the hippie Haight-Ashbury era of San Francisco, and I got to sort of play myself as a child and also as an adult, but it wasn't me, it was a character. So it was so much fun to go through these different ages of being a child, a teenager, and then an adult. So I really enjoyed that. Was fun. Perspective studying under Dwight Conkergood. Well, we're going into a much more academic, that's a much more academic conversation, which is absolutely fine. But, I think that there is a sense that merging theater with scholarship is very important. So studying with all of these people who are on the borderline of scholarship, artistry, drama therapy, so a therapeutic way of using theater in the field, and the way of performance studies, which is a whole nother field connected to that. So that's a kind of whole talk, which brings us into the academic side of theatrical study. Fascinating, and I can send through the Coconut Theater some of my my dissertation, and you can see where I've linked these performance studies concepts and theories into the practice of the HEAT Collective, Healing, Education, Activism, Theater. So it was wonderful working with these people, and Tammy Spry and Conkergood, and I have a PhD not in performance studies, although there was a brilliant woman, Soini Madison, who runs the performance studies program at Northwestern. She was on my committee for my doctorate, but mostly the doctorate was in leadership and change. So the idea of theater as leadership and as activism and change. The person who started the program I went to, the PhD program I went to, started the Peace Corps. So it was very focused on activism and changing the world through the work that we do. Please keep working, keep being curious, and it's just been a great pleasure to be with you here this evening for you and this morning for me. Okay, bye everyone. Thank you.